my top 10 organic content hooks. I just finished a book this past week that teaches the content hooks that I found to be most effective for attracting leads through organic content. And the reason I'm doing this is because there's an ongoing debate in the marketing world between paid traffic and organic traffic. And it's just one of those things where it's not about or, it's about and. You need to have both of these working for you to really build something sustainable. And the people I know who really have a sustainable inbound system for attracting the right type of traffic, which I talked about last week, is being able to use these two in conjunction with one another. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean on today's live, and also give you a sneak peek of some of the stuff that is in my new book, The Viral Content Cookbook, which is a 10 chapter book that covers my top 10 hooks for attracting organic content that actually is ready to do something, to join a coaching program, to buy a product, to become a lead. I'll share a quick story about somebody I know who is getting about 1 million views per video right now across 4 of his different platforms, and he hasn't made a dollar yet. And that's because some traffic is just there to be entertained. And if you build an audience like this, you can spend a lot of years putting the ladder up against the wall, climbing the ladder, and find out that when you get to the top, that it's a dead end. It doesn't really lead you anywhere. And that's not what you want. You want to be able to do this the right way so that when people come to you, you have people who you've never heard of coming to you saying, I've been following your content for years. I read your book. And they're just ready to get started. They don't want to haggle over price. They're ready to follow your advice. They aren't price shopping or comparing you to other competitors out there. In other words, they see you as an expert instead of a commodity. And this really comes down to how you show up before they ever show up on your phone, your sales page, your webinar, whatever it is. And if you're an expert, like a coach, a consultant, an agency owner, somebody who has a service where the main thing that you're delivering is your expertise. Maybe you have a team working for you that is applying things for your client, but without your expertise, the service or the product you're selling really wouldn't be anything but a commodity. It'd just be another ad agency or just another coaching program or just another retreat or whatever it is. If you're the type of person where what really adds value in your business is your unique experience and expertise, and you have enough of it to where you can't be replaced by AI, and we'll talk about that in a minute, then one of the hardest things to deal with as an expert is being stuck in your warm network. In other words, most of your clients come to you from people who already know you or you met in person and spend a lot of time following up with, building a relationship. And a lot of the time, those don't even go anywhere. And as you know, you can't really grow a business. You can launch a business that gets you to a certain level, but you're going to hit an income ceiling if all your sales and your new clients come to you from people who are referrals, who already know you. What are the odds that your network already has the power in it to bring you everybody that you need to get to the income goal? You probably don't have that right now. And that's the reason why you're watching this. You want to know how, through organic or paid content, you can expand your network and start attracting more people. And if you've tried to do that, if you've tried posting organic content or paid ads and just don't feel like you're getting the traction, or maybe a trickle of people are coming to you, but they're still price haggling, they're still getting on calls with you, and at the end of it saying, let me think about it, or coming back to you and saying, well, I don't really have the money, but then you find out that they spent several $1,000s on somebody else, which does happen a lot and is incredibly frustrating. It's not your offer, it's not your audience that's causing that problem. It is one single thing that most people are aware that it's a problem, but they don't really know how to solve it. And that's your content. It's the way that you're showing up. I want you to imagine this instead. Imagine if people came to you who you hadn't heard before, who had been following your content, reading your book for years, and just showed up out of the blue and were ready to pay you your full hourly rate without any price haggling, without comparison shopping. That has happened to me many, many times. In fact, there was one time when the person who came to me, I had no idea who he was, didn't know about him. He was just someone who'd been reading my book, but he had been lurking around for 3 years, and he didn't show up kind of orbiting me for a while. He just got right on the phone with me and was ready to pay whatever rate I was asking. That's the type of client that you want. You want someone you want to have a client attraction system where when someone comes to you, you don't have to wrestle with all these objections. Let me think about it. Let me talk to this person, that person. How would that feel if you could spend less time out there chasing people, explaining your service, justifying your service over and over again, creating these detailed proposals, if instead the content you already have out there actually prepared those people, so by the time they come to you, you're not having to do a lot of overcoming objections and all that other stuff. The person's just ready to go. Now, if that sounds too good to be true, I want you to think about this. There's somebody right now in your industry who is already doing this. You probably know who they are. I want you to picture that person. Just think about it. You've probably looked at their stuff, their sales funnel, their website, their offers, and you're racking your brain trying to figure out, what is this person? Can I reverse engineer their offer? Can I reverse engineer their funnel? How do I find more of this type of audience that they're attracting? Because all I seem to be attracting is price shoppers. It's almost like when you're out fishing and there's someone in a boat 100 yards away and they're catching all these fish that they would typically serve in five-star restaurant. And meanwhile, you're either catching nothing, or worse, you're catching those fish that eat off of the bottom of the ocean. And you're thinking, what is it? I mean, they're in the same environment that I am, and I'm getting a completely different result. So what I teach in these live videos is how to solve that problem by changing your messaging. Now, the book that I'm writing right now is called The Viral Content Cookbook. I just finished writing it, and what I'm going to cover today is some hooks that I use to grab a person's attention, someone who has never heard of you before. They're just kind of whipping through social media and they happen to see one of your videos. Do they scroll right past it, or do they stop? We're going to talk about how to get them to actually stop their scroll and pay attention. That's the first step. And if you can't do that, it does not matter how good your offer is. It doesn't matter how good your entire webinar presentation, sales funnel, website, testimonials, how good your service really is. If you can't grab the person's attention, you're just going to have a lot of stuff out there that you spend a lot of time and energy on, and it's just zeros, right? You get maybe a little like here and there from your mother-in-law or whatever, but no one's really coming to you. So that's the first step, right? The second one is what a lot of people never think about. And that is, how do you take that attention and turn it into interest? What you hear typically people say is, well, I got the person's attention for the first few seconds, but I can't hold their attention. Trying to hold a person's attention is futile, because that's not actually what's happening. When a person stays engaged for the next 3 to 5 minutes, the next hour, whatever it is, it has nothing to do with holding attention and everything to do with turning attention into interest through curiosity and the expectation that if they stick around, that you're going to say something or share something that they have not heard before, and that's going to change their trajectory when it comes to the problem that you solve. Because people don't buy products or services, they buy solutions to problems. And if they hear that you're just pitching something, or you're just trying to build trust or share your testimonials and all those other things, you're just going to sound like another salesperson. It doesn't matter how good your testimonials are, how much experience you have. None of that matters unless they're sitting around waiting for some piece of information, some insight that they believe is going to change the way they think about their problem in such a way to where it's going to be easier to solve. It's going to be more accessible. It's going to happen faster. It's going to be more enjoyable. They're going to get a bigger version of the result. It's going to be longer lasting. Those are the expectations that cause a person to go from holding attention for 5 seconds to actually leaning in and saying, okay, I'm going to stick around because I'm going to learn something, or I'm going to get something. And it's not a free thing, right? Do you see that mistake a lot, that people say, in a minute, I'm going to give you this free thing? That doesn't work, because no one's going to hang around for something for free unless they expect that the free thing that they're going to get is going to show or tell them something that's going to change the way they think about the problem they solve, and make it easier to solve, make the results last longer, whatever it is. Okay. So those are the two things. And what I have taught people in this book that I'm writing is how to actually do that. Okay. So that's going to require me to show you what I actually have on my screen here. Now, I'm not giving this away to anybody. Okay. I know some people like to be sneaky and like go up to that little URL here and like screenshot the URL and go and ask for access to my book. Please don't do that. Okay. You're asking for access to something that I created only for my coaching clients. I'm showing you this today because I want you to get a sneak peek of the things we're talking about. And then if you want to get the book, put a comment below here or message me and say, hey, I'd like to get a copy of the book when it comes out, and I'll make sure that you do. Okay. So this is the book I put together. It's called the Viral Content Cookbook. And this is 23 scroll stopping hooks that grab attention and turn it into interest and engagement. Okay. So first thing I want to talk about is, number one, is what people get wrong about hooks. This is right here in the introduction. So, well, let me show you this first. Every chapter in this book, when you go, for instance, to the first chapter and you finish the first chapter, this is really cool because all you got to do is take the content of the chapter, which I'm going to do right here and show you an example, and you copy paste the content into your favorite AI. It asks you a few questions and it actually generates scripts for these hooks for you that you can use in your social media. So if you don't want to read this stuff and don't want to learn it and just want to like copy paste your way to it, I don't recommend doing that for reasons we'll talk about. But I've created this book to where you can. You can just have it create scripts that you can get on a teleprompter, that you can write, that you can turn into images, whatever it is. But the main thing I want to talk about today is the psychology behind this, because this is the one thing that if you don't understand the psychology of hooking, the only thing you can do is search other people's social media and kind of try to decode what they're doing. And even if you get someone who's getting millions and millions of views, millions of likes, a lot of engagement, here's what happens a lot of the time. You look at what they're doing and you're, okay, I kind of think I know what they're doing, and you try to reverse engineer it for your business. And I've seen a lot of people do this, but the thing is, if your analysis of what they're doing is wrong, if you look at it and you think a certain psychological thing is at work there and you're incorrect about that, then you're going to rebuild your own version of it, and you're going to remove the thing that made it effective, or you're going to change the thing that made it effective. Or maybe you'll think, well, that doesn't quite sound like the way that I would say it, so you change it to match your quote unquote voice, and you lose the potency of it. And if you've been following somebody else and looking at all the engagement they're getting and trying to figure out like how they're doing it and reverse engineering, and you're still not getting results, I promise you that that's why. That's the first thing. Second thing is really important to understand. The type of people who engage and comment and like and really like get involved in your posts usually aren't your buyers. Most of the people who come to me, in fact, I could go through my top 4 clients, and I don't think any of them have ever like maybe made one comment on my posts in years. That's not a coincidence. There's a trick out there that people kind of play on themselves, where they look at someone who's got a lot of engagement, a lot of comments, and think, well, that means they're making a lot of sales. They probably are. But the people who are making those comments probably aren't their buyers, because the high altitude buyers, the people who spend a lot of money on your services, they want to do what they're doing faster because they value their time. They don't spend a lot of time doing like this stuff on social media. It's just not the type of, again, I could take my top 5 people and they just don't do that. They're spending a lot of time working in their business, strategizing, and all those other things. And usually any type of engagement that you see on their social media is probably not even them, it's somebody else. So this is really important to understand. The things I'm teaching you show you how to attract buyers, not people who are just going to like, comment, whatever that is, and maybe they're going to contact you, but they're going to kind of jerk you around and say, hey, I'm interested in this, and you're never going to hear from them again. Those types of people aren't what we want. We want buyers. And what I'm going to show you is how to actually find them. Okay. So, well, how to get them to find you. So the first thing to understand that I talk about in this book is that there are stages, there are decision stages that people go to, leading from them being a stranger to someone who's buying from you. There are decision stages. I talk about this in the introduction. The decision stages are right here. This is, I will admit, this is not very entertaining and fun and sexy, but this is the one thing that if you can focus, like drink your coffee, do whatever you have to do, and actually learn the psychology of this, even though studying it is kind of boring, that's what's really going to catapult your results, is these 5 things right here. I teach this in all of my work: cold traffic copywriting, my 10 persuasive copywriting techniques. I have like 30 books on marketing and copywriting and persuasion and sales, and they all boil down to these things. This is the magic skeleton key that unlocks the types of results you're looking for. And I don't know anybody except for like maybe one person who's actually teaching this at the level of precision that you're going to learn in my stuff. Okay. So the first thing is, when someone is scrolling through social media, they're one of 4 different stages that person can be in when it comes to the product that you sell. Okay. The first one is stage 1. And this is somebody who has the problem that you help them solve. They have it. And they're eventually, at some point, maybe within the next few weeks, days, months, depending on the nature of the problem, they're going to be looking for a solution. They will be buying from somebody, and they'll be spending a lot of money doing it. Sometimes it takes years for them to get from stage 1 to stage 2. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. But here's what happens with a lot of people. They only know how to talk to a person who is right at the decision point where they're just comparing you to other brands out there. And if that's the first time you show up on their radar, I guarantee you somebody else has already almost made the sale. They've had a referral, they've been following somebody else longer. The chances of them going with you are not very high. You want to get into their decision process earlier. So stage one is where the person is experiencing the symptoms of the problem you solve, right? That's what it says right here. They're experiencing the symptoms of the problem you solve, but they don't connect those symptoms to a deeper and more serious problem. That's the one you solve. In business, maybe they're just attracting low quality leads. That's a symptom of your messaging. Okay. So let's say that that's an indifferent prospect in my niche. That's a person who is saying, okay, I don't need to change my messaging, because that's what I would help them do. I would help them change their messaging, but they're not thinking, well, there's something wrong with my messaging. They're not thinking that at all. They're thinking, how do I stop attracting low quality leads? Now, what do you think is going to happen if I go to that person and start talking to them about how I can help with their messaging and they don't realize that's the problem? They will not listen. They'll just think I'm trying to sell something. And then months down the road, when they finally realize that is the problem, I'm not even on their radar because I was just another person trying to sell something. They're probably not going to remember me unless you do what I teach you in this video. Okay. So this can show up anywhere, no matter what you're selling. If you're selling a health product that actually helps people to reset their nervous system and their gut health, they're probably not thinking it's my gut health, it's nervous system regulation, it's somatic work I need to do. They're not sold on the category of solution you're looking for. So if you try to show up with an ad that teaches them the value of that thing and they don't make the connection between the symptom they're experiencing today and the problem you solve, they won't listen. They're gone. They're going to scroll right past you because it's completely irrelevant to them. But if you can get on a stage one prospect's radar earlier and you become the person that moves them deliberately through your messaging at the right pace, the right sequence, to the point where they're at stage four, by the time they get to the decision, you've been on their radar so long, they're so familiar with you, they trust you so much that it doesn't really matter if somebody else comes along, because now you've edged the competition out. And this is how attraction marketing works, right? So that's stage one. Second stage is curious. Now, the way I arranged this book is I arranged it according to each of these stages. So part one of this book actually teaches you how to turn indifference into attention. So the first three chapters of this book give you some specific hooks, which we'll talk about in a minute, for how to capture these people's attention. Because most people, again, would come right out with a sales pitch, an ad, an invitation to a webinar. These people aren't going to listen to you. Somebody else is going to get their attention who knows how to do what we're talking about right now. So that's the first stage. The second one is when the person is now, they know they have the problem, right? They have acknowledged, okay, this is the problem that I have, and they're starting to look for solutions. So this is stage two. I'll go back to this screen again. Stage two are curious. They are not ready to buy something. If you send them a sales script, an offer page, something to buy, they're not going to pay attention to you. Okay. So this is the second stage. This is the person who has gone, okay, I now know what's really causing the problem. It's not my leads, it's my messaging. Make sense? Or I know what's causing the problem now. It's not the fact that I can't sleep at night, it's my nervous system regulation. Or it's not the fact that I have pain in my feet, it's my gut health. So now they've identified the problem. Okay. And if you're the person who can hook them early and get them there to where they understand that, they're going to trust you more because you've educated them. But if you try to sell them something at stage one, they're just going to see you as another salesperson, and they're going to go on with their life. And then months later, when they realize what's really the root of the problem, by that time, somebody else is on their radar and it's probably too late for you. Okay. So that's stage two, is they're looking for a solution to the problem. Now, here's the mistake a lot of people make at this stage is they put their offer out there. For instance, I might say to them, I'm a copywriter, and here's why I'm superior to other copywriters out there. Here's why you should choose me as a copywriter. The problem is, if they're in stage two, they are not sold on the type of solution you offer, right? They're not sold that they need a copywriter. They're thinking, okay, it's my messaging. Do I need to get an AI? Do I need to have a consultant? Do I need to hire someone who does copy? They may not even know a copywriter is something that exists, right? They may have a lot of other ideas about how to solve their messaging. They may want to go buy a book. They may want to go watch a seminar, whatever it is. There's a variety of different solutions they're looking for. And if I come right out saying, positioning myself against competitors and saying, here's why I'm the best copywriter out there, and they're not even sold on the idea of copywriting and why they need that, what am I going to sound like? Another salesperson. They may even have a bias against the category you belong to. And so it doesn't matter how much trust you try to build with your testimonials, your experience, how long you've been copywriting, even your results. That might kind of work, but you're really up against a losing battle if you're still trying to tell them why you're the best in your category at stage 2. Now, some of you are probably thinking, God, no wonder people have been ignoring what I'm saying, is because it's not that I'm saying the wrong thing, it's I'm timing it wrong. That's what hooks are all about. So cold traffic, whether they're coming to you through a paid ad or organic traffic, most of them are going to be in one of these two stages. By the time they get to stage 3, which we'll talk about in a second, like I said, they probably already have a referral. They've probably been, someone already got a hold of them in stage 1 or stage 2. And your odds of actually presenting yourself as something superior are not very good. They're probably just comparing you to other people. They're probably only comparing based on price. They don't understand the difference between you and them. There's low trust. There's low familiarity. And this is why most marketing fails, is because they only know how to talk to the third stage here. And this is the stage where they've actually selected your category, right? They're saying, okay, I need to hire a copywriter, or I need to hire a gut health specialist, right? Or I need to hire, I need to get this type of software platform, or I need to hire this type of realtor, whatever it is. I need to hire this type of financial expert. This is stage 3, where they've decided on your category, right? They've decided, okay, I need to hire a copywriter. I need to hire a paid ad agency. I need to hire a social media agency. But those are your direct competitors, do the quote same thing that you do. But now the question in the prospect's mind is, how are these people different? Or how is this category really any different? Is it all just about price, right? Do I just pick the person with the lowest price? That's the comparing stage. Are you starting to see why, if you say the wrong thing within the first few seconds, because you don't know what stage a person is in, it ain't going to matter how much credibility you have or how good you are at what you do or your testimonials. And none of that stuff is going to matter if you miss this. This is the one thing. Now you're probably thinking, well, how do I know that? How do I know what's in their mind? There's actually a really interesting secret I talk about in this book, which I talk about in the conclusion of this book. But this is the first thing to understand. So stage 4 is a person who has now, they know who you are. They've seen your offer. They've decided that they are going to buy from you, but they haven't done it yet. And you're probably thinking, well, why do I even need to market that to that person? Because they haven't done it yet. They haven't paid anything. This is where you lose people in the follow-up because you push too hard or because you try to over-educate them. You treat them like they're still a stage 1 prospect when they're a stage 4 prospect, which wastes their time. You can make a mistake at any stage. You can talk to a stage 1 like they're a stage 2 and lose them. You can talk to a stage 4 like they're a stage 1 and lose them, right? You have to understand. Otherwise, you're just kind of trying whatever you're trying, and hopefully you're throwing darts at the bullseye, not really knowing where it is. And yeah, you're going to hit it sometimes, and that's probably why you're making money. You're probably very, very good at what you do, and there's a couple times when you're just really nailing it. You're happen to catch one of these people exactly where your message aligns with the conversation in their head, but you don't know how you're actually doing it because you don't know this. Now you do. And that's what this book introduces you to. All my work does this. My work on cold traffic copywriting, which tells you what type of funnel to build. The funnel you build actually has to match their stage of awareness. And sometimes people luck out and they build a successful funnel. And other times they build a great funnel, but it mismatches their stage of awareness. And of course, it gets meager results. Meanwhile, you're watching somebody over there getting crazy results. Why? Because they happen to hit the nail on the head. They may not even know they're doing this correctly, but they got it right. And when you can intentionally diagnose your audience, plan your content the way that I talk about in this book, then that's when you can create the type of attraction we're talking about. Okay, so stage 4 is a person who's decided they're going to buy from you and they just need that final nudge toward the last decision. Here's the mistake a lot of people make at stage 4 is they overuse urgency. They abuse urgency, and the person gets irritated because they don't want to be pushed to make a decision because they have some really, really quote good reason why they're not. And if you push them, yeah, sure, some people are going to respond. People who can't self-regulate and have a really, really high, like really low emotional intelligence because they're impulsive and they're afraid of losing things. If you're overusing urgency and you're attracting a lot of people who just aren't paying you very much, aren't using what you learned, they're just kind of pain in the butt clients, it's probably because your marketing is really good at attracting people who are not self-regulated. And I have a whole book about this, which talks about the difference between a person who's at a high altitude in life, has a lot of money, a lot of status, and the internal differences between them and people who don't have a lot of money and procrastinate and don't use your stuff and don't follow up and ghost you or whatever it is, that's a different type of client. And you can't weirdly say in your content, attention, self regulated people. It's going to sound weird. You have to say things in your messaging, subtle things that attract the right person and repel the wrong person, right? And you're probably doing the opposite right now. There's probably subtle language cues in your messaging that I talk about in my other book, which is called Is Your Messaging Attracting the Wrong Audience, that are actually calling out to people who have low emotional intelligence, aren't very broke. God bless them. I mean, everyone's at a certain place in their life, but those types of people usually don't have a lot of money because their life is kind of chaotic and a mess. And they probably bring that chaos into their relationship with you when you're trying to work with them as a client. They're not showing up for calls, they're delaying, they're not paying their invoice, all that other stuff. That's a certain type of person that your messaging is attracting. Okay. That's a whole other conversation we can get into. I have a whole other book about that. But these are the four things you need to understand, because I'm going to show you now. I'm going to go through the hooks, which are relevant to each of these stages. But it's important that you understand everything I just said about the psychological stages. Okay. So now that we have some clarity, let's look at what's actually in this book. Okay, so the first thing is part one teaches you how to turn indifference into interest. Indifference is the people in stage one. They have the problem that you help them solve, but they don't know the problem. They're experiencing the symptoms of the problem. And so I open this chapter saying, if you're an expert and you have expertise, insights, real results, and you can explain things better than most paid courses, your content can still sink like a stone, not because your ideas don't have value, but because your opening lines keep talking to a mind that is already shopping, right? In other words, you're trying to ask a person to make a buying decision, but they're still thinking about, well, what's really behind this symptom? Is it something I should care about? Is it even matter? Is it important? Is it going to go away? You interrupt that thought process with a sales pitch about why they should buy this thing to solve the symptom, and they don't really understand whether it's going to go away, how important it is, how urgent it is, how critical it is, and more importantly, that it's tied to a bigger problem that you can actually help them solve. It won't matter how much you know. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I can educate them. That is what you do, but you have to hook them first. No one's going to sit through a 3 to 5 minute conversation tying this symptom to to the root cause and the problem, and really helping you to demonstrate your expertise. If you can't grab them and get them to go, okay, I'm going to hang around and make sure this person has something to say, they're probably going to think, this person sounds like a professor. This is boring. I don't have time for this. Even if they say it's interesting, they're not going to make the time to actually sit down and watch the whole thing. They're just going to leave. So this is the first thing you got to understand. So what do you do in your hook is you actually meet them by talking to them about the symptom and by linking it to something that they're doing or something that they believe or some misconception they have about the problem. So I'm not going to read this whole chapter. What I'm going to do that I think is really cool is I'm going to take this whole chapter and the AI instructions at the end, and I encourage you to read the chapter. I know some people are going to want to get this book and copy and paste and do what I'm talking about and not read and not understand the psychology. It's not going to work for you if you do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it into AI. And I'm just going to read you what it gives me. Okay. So I'm putting this chapter in here and it's going to ask me a couple of things. First of all, it's going to ask me, let's see if I can even share what I'm doing here on the live. If I do a screen share, can I show you? No. Well, let me do that. Okay, so I got to unshare here and replace it with this. Okay, here we go. So this is what I'm working in right here. I just put this whole chapter into here. Remember, we're talking to indifferent prospects. We're talking to people who have the symptom of the problem, but they don't really know what the problem is. So this is what this AI does first, is it asks you very specific thing about who the target audience is. I'm going to say expert marketing. I'm going to say expert funnel troubleshooters, right? So that's going to be, no, that's not my audience. Expert business coaches, right? This is a pretty easy audience to understand. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, this doesn't apply to my business, I do e-commerce, I don't care what you're selling, this always applies to it. So don't get too lost in the example that I'm using and thinking that because I'm using a specific example, it doesn't apply to your business. This is psychology. It applies to everybody who has a brain and nervous system. Okay, so what is the problem that they deal with? I'm going to say low quality leads, right? So it's asking me what audience I serve. It's asking me what problem I help them solve. And the solution that I offer is copywriting, sales funnel copywriting, right? And what outcome do they want? Attract more ready to buy leads, right? So I'm going to tell it all those things, and I'm going to show you how it leverages the psychology of what we just talked about to actually create something here. So now what it's doing is it's giving me hooks, right? Now, I want you to notice something really interesting about all these hooks. Because listen, you can put everything that I'm talking about into an AI and ask it to do it, and AI will absolutely flop because AI does not know the psychology I've primed this with. In fact, the things that AI knows about marketing are actually counter to what really works. It's one of the biggest problems that experts are facing right now is they're trying to get AI to produce something that's high quality, but they have to train it with their expertise first because AI's expertise is not based on the small fraction of people who really know what they're doing. It's based on all that stuff that's out there on the internet, which is mostly written by people who don't know what they're doing and we're just hired for $15, $20 an hour to write an article, or are trying to sell a course on marketing, but they learned everything about marketing they did from reading a book about marketing. And that book on marketing was written by somebody else who did the same thing. And it's just this big diluted funnel of nonsense, right? You've probably noticed that. So AI on its own cannot do this. You have to train it and co-pilot it with the things that I teach. That's the only reason I do all these books. Still, people are always saying like, well, why, when AI exists, do you teach this stuff? Because AI doesn't know what it's doing. But AI can be very powerful if you prime it the right way. So here's what this did. Here, let's look at hook number one. You've probably heard low quality leads means you need better targeting. What you don't hear is how your funnel quietly trains good buyers to leave. Okay, now think about that for a second. It doesn't say anything at all. Notice I'm selling copywriting services. It says nothing about copywriting services. It says nothing about why I'm better. It doesn't even say that your messaging is the problem. Why? Because these people don't make that connection. So if I say, hey, here's how your messaging is attracting low quality leads, I've asked them now to swallow a conclusion that I haven't even proven. And what are they going to think? This is just another person trying to sell blank, blank, blank. That's what they're going to think. You have to meet them where they are. But if I say to them, low quality leads means you've probably heard that low quality leads means you need better targeting. What you don't hear is how your funnel quietly trains good buyers to leave. This is called a myth buster hook. In other words, I'm telling them, hey, here's the myth you've probably heard, but here's what you haven't heard. Now, the idea is that if they're in this stage and they've kind of been thinking about how to solve the symptom, they've probably heard the myth before. You got to pick a myth that it actually is out there and that really is a myth, because what's going to happen is they're going to see that and they're going to go, well, I have heard that and I've tried that and that hasn't worked. So maybe this person knows something I don't know. You see the difference there? I've connected it to the symptom. I've acknowledged the symptom is low quality leads. I didn't dismiss that. I joined the conversation happening in their head because they're thinking about low quality leads. They're not thinking about messaging. They're not thinking about any of the stuff that I want to talk about. But I also said, you've probably heard this. You've probably tried this to solve it. This hasn't worked. And if they're a yes to that, if they're a yes, that is the problem I'm having, well, they think it's the problem, but it's really the symptom. We can get to that later. And they say, yes, I have tried that and that hasn't worked. Now you've gotten two yeses. And the third thing needs to be a question mark in their head. So they say, yes, that sounds true. Yes, that sounds true. What's this other thing about that you're going to say in a second here? And now you've got their attention for the first 2 seconds. That's called a mythbuster hook. It works really well on stage one. It does not work very well on stages 2, 3, or 4. In fact, it'll bomb on the other stages. Okay. Now think about that. How many times have you've seen somebody out there like, this is the mythbuster hook, and then they teach you it and then you try it and you go out there and you don't really get the result you want. And you're like, well, why didn't that work for me? What's happening with that other person who's using that hook is they probably already have a big audience and they're happening to hit. First of all, they have a lot of trust and recognition. So people are engaging with them because of that, but they're not actually teaching you how to get traction from zero. To get traction from zero, when you have no brand reputation, no big following, none of this stuff that these big gurus already have to their advantage, you can't afford to be. A lot of them are really sloppy, right? They're getting away with things you wouldn't get away with because they have brand power. But you have to get traction from zero. And to do that, you have to nail the conversation in their head in terms of the symptom of the problem, something they've already tried that hasn't worked. And then the third thing is, I'm about to tell you in a second why that actually is not the real problem. Now, I've bought their attention for 2 or 3 seconds. That's the only thing I've got to do, right? That's a myth buster hook, and it works really well on stage one prospects. Now, let me give you a sneak peek before I get back to this. The first part of this book that I've written actually shows you the three things that are most effective for talking to this stage, right? So the Mythbuster hook is a really effective one. And the other one is what I call a symptom to crisis hook. We won't have time to get into that, but that's the second type of hook that works really well for these people. And then, of course, the third type of hook is where you connect a crisis to a symptom, right? Those are both kind of, I put these in order of which is harder to pull off, but those are the three types of hooks that work for people who are at this stage. So, what this AI is doing now is it's giving you these hooks. Now, what you don't want to do is generate this list and start changing it, because now you're changing the psychology based on what you think is going to work. And what you think is going to work is getting the result you're getting right now. So if you follow this, you'll see a difference in your results. So it's given me 10 ideas. And then all I'm going to do now is go to this and go, okay, I'm going to go hook one, right? This is really cool. Check this out. Again, this is not something AI can do on its own. It has to be programmed. Now, this is generic AI I'm putting this in. So I'm kind of going to get a generic result. I didn't use my copywriting AI specifically because I wanted you to see like the naked result of this. If I were to put this in my copywriting AI, the result would be even better. But look at this. Here we go. It's generated you your entire post content now. It said, you've probably heard low quality leads means you need better targeting. What you don't hear is how your funnel quietly trains good buyers to leave. Now, if I hear that, and I go, my funnel's quietly training good buyers to leave, I'd at least like to stay around and figure out like why that is, right? So now you've bought their time for the first 2 seconds. Now that doesn't mean you can start busting out with this with, hey, it's really your messaging. Here's the problem, because they're still resistant to that. They're still at stage one. Don't try to move them too fast to the next decision stage or you'll lose them. That's why people drop off, right? But what I did here is I said, you've probably heard low quality leads mean you need better targeting. So you tweak your audience, you narrow your interest, you rewrite the ad, you tell yourself, if I can just get out in front of the right people, this fixes itself, right? And then I say, but what you don't hear is a lot of quote bad leads are actually good buyers who got taught to leave by your funnel, because most funnels do one thing really well. They make the problem feel optional. Okay, let's stop right there. Notice I'm using a technique now that I call breadcrumbing. And breadcrumbing is absolutely the most powerful secret in messaging, because once you grab their attention, you got to convert their attention into interest. I did that by planting a seed of curiosity in the first sentence. The first sentence is something that you're telling them you're going to learn something that's going to change your results. Stick around. Now, what's really important is what you do next, because notice what this hook does. That if you were to just go to AI and say, hey, give me a Mythbuster hook, they'd probably right away bust a myth, give away the secret, and that would be the end of the content, right? What the AI won't do, because it's not trained to do this, is it won't incrementally reveal a bit by bit of information in such a way to where the person wants to stay tuned, because it just gave them what they wanted. It gave it away in the first 10 seconds. And that's why you get that attention. Somebody sees it, they start scrolling, they get the answer they're looking for, and they say either, oh, okay, now I know, I'll go try that. Or, now I've heard that before. That sounds like the same thing. You got to incrementally reveal it to them. And you got to do something else really important that I did in this hook. Notice what this second paragraph does. It doesn't actually tell them anything new. It identifies with their experience. It said, you've probably heard that low quality leads mean you need better targeting. So you tweak the audience, you narrow your interest, you write the ad. In other words, I'm describing what their everyday life is like as they're trying to solve this problem. Why? So they feel like I understand them and where they are right now. So they're continuing to say, yeah, that sounds like it. Now you can't do this for too long because they'll get annoyed, right? But if I confirm to a person, hey, I understand your problem. Let me describe it really quickly. Does this sound like what's happening to you? Now I've bought their attention because I say, hey, in a second, I'm going to tell you something, but let me just make sure the problem's right. Now I've identified it and I've just bought another 7 or 8 seconds of their time. Right. But now they're also hanging around because now they're thinking, okay, this person understands where I'm coming from. They might be about to tell me something useful. I'm going to keep listening. And that is how you incrementally turn that curiosity into desire. You start to ramp it up. And that's the next step of the whole process. It goes attention, interest, desire. And then we could talk about the other two in a second here, but that's beyond the scope of this discussion. So I hope you're seeing that the hook matched where their stage of awareness is. It got them to say yes to two things, and then it told them there's a third thing they're going to learn that's going to be really valuable for them. It didn't try to sell them anything. It didn't try to educate. It just said, hang on for a second. Let's take a look at this thing that you've been trying and it hasn't been working. Let's talk about why. Then I identify with their experience and they go, okay, yes, now I feel understood. There's empathy there, right? And then I say, here's what you don't hear. Now they're thinking, okay, this is what I clicked on the video for. So I kept them from getting impatient. I said, okay, here's what I'm going to tell you next. A lot of quote bad leads are actually good buyers. What? Now I've really got their curiosity going. I just kind of use like a confusion technique to get them to go, what? How is that possible? I'll keep listening. And then it said, who got taught to leave by your funnel. Now notice I still haven't told them the thing I'm telling them in the beginning, but I'm incrementally telling them things, confirming their experience. And I'm not just giving away the secret right away. I'm breadcrumbing it out to them in pieces, and I'm making sure that every piece that I give them is a reward for sticking around. And by the way, for some people hear me talk about this and say, well, that's unethical, isn't it? Why shouldn't you just tell the person? It's actually not unethical. What's unethical is plopping all the information in the person's lap before their brain's ready to receive it all and overloading them and get them to say, think about it. And then you don't get to help them. That's unethical, right? Trying to like stroke their ego by educating them, so on and so forth. But you give them so much information that they don't process all of it. And you might as well have given them no value at all if you overload them. So what I'm doing is I'm incrementally doing it and saying, okay, I understand this is a new idea to you. We're going to move our way through this process very, very slowly. And while we're doing it, I'm going to build up your desire for the result, which we could talk about. But let's keep reading this because most funnels do one thing really well. They make the problem feel optional. Now I'm starting to give them some information, but notice I'm still not saying the problem's your messaging. I'm still not saying that. So I read all the way to the bottom of this and I'm starting to give them a little information and they say, they lead with a program, they lead with a framework, they lead with here's what to do. And at stage, okay, now here's where AI kind of screwed up because we don't want to use the term stage one buyers in content talking to people who aren't familiar with it. So again, this is why me putting this in generic AI was kind of risky. I would put it in my copywriting AI that knows not to do stupid stuff like this, but we can fix that. So at stage one, a buyer needs that and thinks, cool, I'm not there yet. I'll come back when it's serious. I'll save this. Now, here's what I'm doing again. I'm describing to them what's probably happening with most of their leads that are saying, this is good information. I'll come back. I'll save this. I'll think about it. And that's what's happening to them. So I'm again confirming like this is the experience. And I haven't revealed everything yet. I'm just giving them a little bit of the time. At the same time, I'm demonstrating to them, I understand you. I understand what's happening to you. Does this sound right? And they're saying yes to all this stuff. Now, some people are still going to leave, right? I get that. But we only want the 20% who are going to become buyers. And then it keeps describing the experience. And finally it says, meanwhile, the people who do opt in, they're the ones who want ideas, not outcomes. They're the ones who want to pick your brain. They're the ones who will say, this is amazing and disappear the moment you mention commitment. Again, I'm identifying with their experience. And now they're saying, yeah, I kind of like this person. They understand where I'm coming from. Like they've seen this problem before. If they've seen the problem and understand it this well, maybe this thing that they're going to tell me is actually useful. And that's what it feels like. You're getting attention, but it's soft calls, but they're slippery. And I go on like describing their experience. At some point, they're going to get a little bit tired of me doing this. Okay. So I have to time this really, really, really well. So I say, so if the real issue isn't targeting, what is the first sentence? What is the first sentence your funnel needs to say so that a serious buyer feels, oh, this is about me right now. So what I did was I told them all the things that don't work. I said, hey, here's why all these other things don't work. Here's what's probably happening to you. And I vented with them a little bit. And then at the end of it, I said, so here's a question for you. Here's a thought-provoking question. What's the first thing you can say in the first line of your funnel that's actually going to cause a person to say, okay, this problem is serious. I need to do something about it. But I did not give away the store. That's what a lot of people do. They try to educate. They over-educate the people. And the person says, let me think about it. And they don't go anywhere. The way this hook opens is it identifies by getting them to say, yes, here's the problem. Here's what you've tried. Here's what I'm going to tell you why it hasn't worked. And I've kind of started to tell them that, started to educate them. And I'm moving them towards the point you'll notice at the end here where I'm going to get them to start looking at their messaging and considering how it's causing the problem. I don't bust right out and saying, it's your messaging. That's the problem, because they're going to resist that. People, especially this audience, they want to arrive at the conclusion on their own. You want to put the information out there in such a way to where they go, God, I never thought about that before. So that you're not telling them what to do. You're actually getting them to arrive at the conclusion on your own. That's called an indirect negotiation. It's a very powerful persuasion frame, but most people don't know how to do that. So I hope you can see, this is just one. Okay, I did an entire book on this. I'm gonna stop right now and say a couple of last things. I just wanted you all to see that. Okay, so I hope you're starting to see, based on everything that we've covered, that that's just one hook. I have 10 different categories of hooks in this book that talk about how to meet a person at each one of these stages, how to grab their attention, how to incrementally move it towards the next action. Now, you're probably thinking, well, Seth, that's not the end of it. How do I get them to book a call? How do I slow down? The first thing we got to know how to do is this. Okay. If we solve this problem, I've got books that can teach you how to do the other stuff. But if you can't get attention and actually turn attention into interest and get them coming to your website, your webinars, your sales calls with some serious intent, it is not going to matter. And this book is designed to solve that one problem. How to get people coming to you who actually are high altitude people, want to solve the problem, have the money, have the intention. The only reason they're not paying attention to you right now is because you're saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, or you're giving it away too soon, you're selling too soon, or you're over educating. How do you know which one you're doing well? This is the last thing I'll say. All these types of hooks for these different stages of prospects, what I teach people to do in the conclusion of this book is I give them a formula and I say, okay, here's your content plan. And here's how you start putting stage one, stage two, these different types of hooks out there in the market. And you start putting that content out there and you start watching how they respond to it. And that will tell you where most of your audience is. Okay, now I know most of them are responding to the stage one hook, so on and so forth. I know where my audience is. And now you can start planning your content. And you do the same thing with all stages. You may find out that you've got people who are at stage three and stage one coming to you, and that's where most of your traction is coming. So what do? You start doing more content like that. And you're getting feedback from your audience about what they respond to that's telling you something really important about them. It's telling you where they are in their psychology, so that when you do it again, you can intentionally do something that matches that stage, matches that psychology, matches that hook type, matches all. I have things in here that actually help you to detect their buying preferences in terms of whether they want speed, whether they want quality, whether they want safety. The problem is that most of the time when people are posting organic content or paid ads, they're just experimenting. They don't, even if they get something that works, they don't have this type of precision. They don't know why it worked. They don't have a system like this that sorts and categorizes people and segments people based on where they are. And so they're just putting a bunch of content out there. Well, I hope this works. Well, I hope this works. This will work. That didn't work. And even when something does work, they can't look at it and go, oh, that worked because they're a stage one prospect who responds to this. They don't know any of that. It's all just experimentation. And you wonder why you're lost, right? And sure, you're maybe going to get some people out there, but you're going to, first of all, you're going to do 10 times more work than you need to, because 80% of what you're doing isn't going to produce any results at all. The 20% that produces the biggest results should tell you where your prospects are, what their buying preferences. So you stop doing that 80% of stuff that's creating less results, and you start doing the 20% that's creating more results. And that's called the 80-20 rule in the flywheel. But if you don't know any of this, if you're not intentionally doing it, and you're just kind of copying what everybody else is out there doing and trying to figure out, and that you're really just gambling and you're hoping that you don't lose like a bunch of your time and energy and years trying to do something because you don't have a plan. And I don't know anybody else. Maybe they're out there and I'd never heard of them before. I don't know anybody else who has a step-by-step precise system like the one that I teach. So that's what's in this new book. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, what do I do next? You've seen this, you've connected with me on social media. If you see this video somewhere, go find me on either Instagram or Facebook and just tell my VA will probably answer the DM because I'm really busy, but just tell them or tell me that you saw this book. This is called the Viral Content Cookbook, and you want to get a copy of it. And here's what I'd like to do. First of all, you can buy the book. Okay, that's fine. Or if you're somebody who's really serious about getting results and you want to actually spend some time and some effort to do this, you want to build a serious business and work with somebody who has been doing this for more than 20 years and actually knows what they're talking about and didn't just arrive on the scene after reading a couple books or having one successful business. Like, I've worked in thousands and thousands of businesses with people one-on-one and in group settings. If you want to work with someone who actually has a track record and who will actually work with you and coach you, I don't do the grunt work, right? That's an agency. I have a partner in an agency that you can also team up with. So there's two options, or there's three. You can buy my book. That's fine. Or we can work together. I can get you on my waiting list for one-on-one or group coaching. Or if you have got enough money to really get some traction, you're just stuck at a plateau with your marketing and really, really want to hit the accelerator without taking a lot of big risks, then I'm a partner in an agency that can actually help you to crack the code on cold traffic. And there's nobody else out there who does it like we do, because the rest of those people, most of those are just following stuff they read in books somewhere. And maybe it's this boilerplate template that works really well for one business and not for yours. It doesn't fit your business because it's not based on these principles that I teach. So that's it. Viral content is not about getting a bunch of likes and getting a bunch of views. It's about getting buyers. And the way you get buyers to actually consume your content and go to the next step and do something is by understanding where they are right now, meeting them where they are, and incrementally moving them towards the next step, not blasting them with a lot of education that they don't need right now, or trying to push a sale sooner than possible. It's knowing where they are in this decision journey. And my books teach you how to do it on your sales funnels, in your email, in your organic content, even on your sales calls. When people show up, you're going to have some people show up on stage 2, some people show up on stage 4. You can't talk to them all the same way and try to move them all at the same pace. You can try, you're going to get some people, but you're going to get a fraction of the results you could be getting. And this is the secret to people who have those huge conversion rates. It's because either they know this and are doing it intentionally and they don't want to tell you, or they're doing it, but they don't know they're doing it, which is true for a lot of these gurus out there. And now they're getting away with a bunch of other stuff that really wouldn't work for you because they got brand power. It's very confusing, but this is how you solve the problem. It's the first step. So if you're ready to do that, get in contact with me, or you can just follow me on the social media or subscribe where you found this video, because I put videos like this out every day, including short videos, long videos. And if you're at a stage 1, stage 2, and you found me here and might at some point, maybe we'll work together. Just hang around, watch my content. Within a few weeks or months, you're going to understand exactly why we should have a conversation. Have a great day. Thanks everybody for attending.